Time is not something scientists understand well. However, in the normal day-to-day world, we understand it well enough. Most of us represent it mentally using metaphors of space and location. We look forward to our vacation because the future is ahead of us. We put the past behind us and move on. NLP takes this spatial metaphor and represents it as a line, a timeline. If our mental images of time lie on a line, then where do we see this line as being? When I talked about meta programs in an earlier video, I could have included this one, because different people represent their personal timeline in different ways mentally. And the two main categories are called in time and through time. People who have an in-time meta-program describe their timeline as passing into and out of their body or their head. In the West, this is most commonly with a line moving from behind to in front, with our past behind us and our future spreading out in front of us. In other cultures, it's reversed. The past is in front of you because you can see your past, you know what it looks like. The future is behind because we don't know what our future looks like, we can't see it. It seems to me likely that personal timeline representations are, to a large extent, culturally determined. Wherever the timeline crosses the person is now. And in-time people very much dwell in the moment. They are good at savouring what is going on and getting caught up and focused and in the flow of current events. They are less good at being aware of where they are in the time stream and being aware of what's coming up. Quite often, in-time people struggle to be on time. They are quite often late. However, this makes them excellent listeners and very good at focusing on the task in hand. The through time meta-program describes a timeline that can be seen in its entirety. We don't exist on the timeline, we observe it. Usually, people describe the timeline as being in front of them. In the West, people usually describe their timeline as moving from the past on the left, that's actually my right, but it's your left, through to the future on their right, which for me is actually the wrong way around. The present moment is directly in front of them. I don't know this, but I speculate that in cultures that read not from left to right as we do in the West, but from right to left, people may well see the timeline as going in the opposite direction, because I believe timelines are largely culturally determined. People with a through-time orientation can mentally scan their whole timeline as if they are mentally travelling through time. These people are typically far more aware of time and where they are in time and what's coming up in the future, but they are less able to commit to the present moment. The idea of timelines is not original to NLP. It existed for many, many years before NLP came along. However, in the NLP community, there are plenty of practitioners who believe they can use the timeline as the basis for therapeutic interventions. As with the rest of this course, though, I'm not going to be sharing any of those therapeutic methods. What I will do, though, is give you the basic process. But first, let's have a little look at some of that history. Notable names in the story of NLP and timelines start with the founders of NLP, Richard Bandler and John Grinder. They continue with Steve and Connie Ray Andreas, and then with Wyatt Woodsmall and Tad James, who wrote the first book about timelines in NLP. And then there are Bobby Bodenhammer and Michael Hall, whose book I read back in the day. Since the original work of Wyatt Woodsmall and Tad James, and continuing with the work of Bodenhammer and Hall, there has been one simple process for a lot of timeline therapeutic techniques. The first step is to learn what change the client wants to make. Then find out how they represent their mental timeline. Are they in time? Are they through time? How is it oriented? How is it compressed at different parts of the timeline? Next, have the client practice visualizing safe events on their timeline. Next, find the source of the problem they want to work on their timeline. These might be traumatic events or limiting decisions that they made. Fifth, have them view these events on their timeline dispassionately, moving further and further away from the timeline to separate themselves from the emotions. The intention here is for them to be able to let go of the negative feelings associated with the event. Next, have them replace those unwanted emotions and undesirable behaviours with new, more resourceful and better choices and emotions. When you've done that, return the client to now on their timeline. Step 8 is to take the client forward on their timeline to a future event where they can test out their new resources and their new emotions. Here, you can check that the process has worked. And finally, 10, when you have checked, bring them back to now and then back into the real world. Timelines are very much at the therapeutic end of the NLP spectrum, but there's something many people are interested in, which is why I decided to cover them in this course. The base idea is simple, although it's not something you're likely to use as a manager. But I do hope that you've found the ideas interesting and can see why they might be useful in a minor therapeutic way to relieve stresses and anxieties and lack of confidence. If you've learned from this video or if you've enjoyed it, please do give it a like, and please subscribe to the channel if you want more valuable content from Management Courses. And don't forget to hit the bell so you don't miss any of those videos. I look forward to seeing you in the next one, and in the meantime, keep learning.